Yeah, I paid mine. I never
Yeah.
went to court.
Okay.
I should have, though, right?
So you're in there and you know before you go in that you're guilty, right?
Yes.
How you feel about it?
Nervous.
Nervous.
Awaiting judgment.
Awaiting judgment, huh?
Hoping for
Come up with all
leniency.
the things you're gonna say to, at the very least, try to minimize the consequences.
Yes. Hoping for leniency.
Yeah.
Okay, so you expect judgment to come down. You're expecting it to be something negative.
Yes.
All right. How do you think sinners feel about judgment? They don't.
Yeah, they don't even think about it.
What's the problem?
They don't see themselves as guilty.
There you
They don't see
go.
themselves as guilty.
They don't see themselves as guilty. They don't see themselves as going before the judge. Even those that do, because you can find someone that'll make the crazy statement, only God can judge me. Yeah. I'll go before him and, like you said, plead my case, something along those lines. But when someone fully understands that they are guilty, and they fully understand that judgment is coming, then there's a certain amount of fear. Now, who would know that they are guilty and would actually fear judgment? What would they have to know?
But they working.
Oh,
Ooh.
they fear judgment?
You'd have to
That
go
judgment's
with-
coming. They
Yeah,
know.
I'm talking about the judgment of God. Now, who
Yes.
would actually fear the judgment of God?
Demons for one thing.
Okay, demons.
Satan.
Satan, all right, how about human?
Yeah.
Yes.
What would it take for them to actually fear?
They would know, they know that, they find out that God is real and that everybody's eyes will see him. When he returns, they're gonna go, do I got a chance? They're gonna get, you know.
I like you said, and everybody sees him, that's good. You said before that they actually know that God is real. All right. This should help you to understand something. Someone can know God exists and that God is real, and can even know that a judgment is coming and that they are going to be caught up in that judgment and not be saved.
Mm-hmm.
They can still reject him.
Right.
It's stupid, but they could. When you see Isaiah 33 and 14, look at the words carefully. The sinners in where? Zion. Where is Zion? What is Zion? Does anybody know? What's the holy city? Jerusalem. The sinners in Jerusalem.
What? Wait a minute, wait. Can you rewind that? You said they know God, but they reject him,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not saved?
Mm-mm. They still, even though they know the judgment is coming. Think about who's in Jerusalem. Who's in Jerusalem?
Saved people.
The temple, right?
Or the
No, who?
Jews.
Jews. Jews. What do they know? From,
They know
Oh,
that-
knowledge of.
yeah, they got the law. They know. By the way, they also have the history.
Right.
Right? They know about, hey, we came up out of Egypt. Right? They know about all of that. They know about Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. They got it all down.
They're still waiting. Some of them are still waiting.
Some of them still waiting on the Messiah, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, even to this day. You will find Jewish people to this day that will make statements like, well, I go to synagogue every now and then. I know God's going to get me. But that is your average Jewish person in the East Coast. They will make statements like that. I worked with a lot of Jewish people that weren't, as they would say, religious, but they believed. But they also saw themselves as being in a place to be judged because they were not attempting to do anything with their Judaism. So it's not, they know. They would be the first ones to tell you, God does exist. The sinners in Zion are afraid. Okay, so I asked y'all a question a minute ago. I'm like, an unsaved person, they're not afraid of judgment because they don't believe in judgment. But look at what this says. The sinners in Zion are afraid. That tells you they know that a judgment is coming. They are fearful. It says, fearfulness has seized the hypocrites. Hypocrites. Because, remember, we're talking about a people who, although they have the temple in Jerusalem, they also have pagan temples in Jerusalem. And while they're walking into one place to supposedly praise the only God, and by the way, that was their mantra, He is the only God, it's the first thing that came out of their mouths, and then they were doing all the things that the law required, the diet, tithing, all of that stuff. They're doing all of that, keeping festivals, but at the same time, they're over here sacrificial babies to Moloch, all other kinds of participating in all these other worship things. The hypocrites, all right, so fearfulness has seized the hypocrites. Okay, so then the question is, who among us, shall dwell with the devouring fire? Who among us shall dwell with the everlasting burnings? So notice how judgment is described. Everlasting fire. That's not good, is it? Devouring fire and everlasting burnings. I'm sorry, devouring fire and everlasting burnings. What's kind of interesting about those questions is the fire is devouring. Devouring means to burn up, but it's also everlasting. It means it never stops. So judgment is described as something that destroys but never stops destroying. It never stops. And the question is, who shall dwell with it? Verse 15. Who can dwell with it? Not that it's happened, but that it's coming. Judgment is coming. Verse 15 says, he who walks righteously and speaks uprightly. So who are we talking about here? The believers.
What are we at?
Isaiah 33 and 15.
Okay.
So in Zion, you had people that knew God existed and yet feared judgment because they were hypocrites. Then you have those that are walking righteously and speak uprightly, who despise the gain of oppressions, who gesture with his hands, refusing bribes, who stops his ears from hearing of bloodshed and shuts his eyes from seeing evil. If you remember, that was kind of the description that was given for God being so upset with Judah because of some of these practices. If you read the law, what you'll notice in the law is big on everything here that you're seeing. The righteousness, especially this despises the gain of oppressions. The law was totally against oppressing anyone. Who gestures with his hands, refusing bribes. The law was totally against bribery. Why bribery, by the way? What is it about bribery that God would be so upset with?
It's unjust.
Attacks on integrity.
Worship of money.
Attack on integrity, unjust, what was that?
Worship of money.
Worshiping money.
Or baby stuff.
When someone gets bribed,
They're lying.
what is the consequence that comes of that?
They just said,
You
"Oh,
do whatever.
lose
Somebody
something."
lost.
They could
Not
be bought.
somebody that's supporting something that they're trying to manipulate somebody else out of.
They could
or
be
So-
bought.
deceitfulness.
So what it usually ends up in somebody else being oppressed.
Right.
Yeah.
So if God can't stand oppression, bribes are usually what we look at is from a political perspective, and that's politically someone gets a piece of something where someone else is denied or oppressed from it. I mean, you see that in our political system. Someone is always going to be oppressed when someone gets bribed.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Armenians are over there in Jerusalem too, or that nation. My friend says Armenians are the first Christian group, and I was like.
Out of Israel?
I don't know, somewhere over there in Armenia or Turkey in that area. He says that they are the first Christians, but they don't believe, he goes, I don't believe in Jesus. So I'm like, doesn't make any sense.
So he's saying he's one of them,
Yeah,
and he says he's a Christian.
right. Well, he says they're the first Christian nation. that he don't believe in Jesus, and I'm like, how could that be?
The Armenians?
Yeah,
No,
I think,
no.
isn't Jerusalem divided into four different sects right now?
Mhm.
In right to this day, there's like 4 different groups.
Yeah. But no, there is no such thing as a Christian nation, first of all.
Right, yeah, well, this is what he believes, so
Yeah.
I was like,
No.
how
Closest
could you
thing,
be- how could you be Christian and not believe in Jesus?
yeah, closest thing to that had to be during Constantine's time, when it was forced.
Yeah.
Or England, when they had the Church of England, but no such thing, but no, not the Armenians. Muslim, but, okay, it's interesting. So, what we see here then is that when it comes to judgment, the ones that are fearful are sinners. What's hard for people to grasp and what's hard to understand is that someone can actually fear judgment and not be saved.
Yeah, that's why I was confused.
It's hard to understand how someone could fear judgment and not be saved, because if you're saved,
It's a standard. You don't have to fear.
you don't have to fear judgment. And in fact, that's what we're seeing here. The saved individual doesn't fear judgment.
There you go.
I mean, I hope y'all aren't worried about judgment if you're saved. But there are unsaved people that fear judgment. And if you listen carefully, you will hear them. They will tell you they fear judgment. Then there are those who are saved that should not fear judgment, but yet fear judgment anyway.
That's me.
What judgment are you afraid of?
Just, I mean,
My mama seen what I had did.
the retelling of all of it, I mean, cause,
The judgment seat of Christ?
I mean, I hold myself, I'm the worst critic of myself anyway, and then just to hear it all over again, I'm like, oh,
So we're talking about the judgment seat of Christ?
yes.
Okay. So, from a biblical perspective, when the Bible talks about a judgment you should fear, you will notice the Bible talks about, a man dying and all coming before judgment. Those of us that are in Christ, because we've been passed over, we're passed over, we passed over that judgment. So, that's the good news. All right? The judgment seat of Christ it's like going before your boss for your yearly review, right? To talk about how well you did the job. Only difference is this boss will have known what you've done with every single minute, not the stuff you highlighted. Because I've often wondered what would happen if reviews were somehow digitally watched over, like they had a computer chip someplace in you that kept up with everything you did. You came into work in some kind of badge and it just detailed everything you did for the 8 hours a day you were supposed to be doing it, so that when you came in for your review, there would be, you spent this much time on Facebook, you spent this much time working on this, and this much time doing that, and this much time in the bathroom, and this much time on break, and this much time at lunch, and all of those things, right? So think of it from that perspective, but here's the other part. If you don't lose your job, okay, you're either going to be rewarded or you're going to lose rewards. That's the judgment seat of Christ. I think where sometimes you get a little, what should bother you or what you should be concerned with, and why there will be tears, is because you come before Christ, and I know there's this whole thing of the Bibe seat and being in around all of these others, and everybody gets to see, but you won't care what they see. Trust me, you won't care what your mama sees. You will not care what anybody sees. Not standing before Jesus. With him standing there, I died for this is what I died for, because that's the judgment seat. I died for this. I died for you to do this. Not you, and again, you know, as Sister Tanya once brought up, it's not about sin, it's about what you do with your saved life. That's what it's about. Did you use it or what'd you do with it? It's the parable of the talents. I left you with something, I went away, I came back, what'd you do with it? Right? That's what it's about, and it's about standing before him, and as we'll discuss here a little bit later, when you see him, he's going to look like he just came off the cross. Yes. He'll still have the wounds as a reminder of what he's done for you. That's the issue right here. You don't care about nothing else. I promise you won't.
Because you said that it's like we're gonna be brothers and sisters now.
Yeah. I'll be brothers and sisters. We won't care about nothing else. So, the saved, going to verse 16, will begin to praise God. And this is the beauty of it all. It says, he will dwell on high, his place of defense will be the fortress of rocks, bread will be given him, his water will be sure. This is why we praise him, because the he here is not God, the he here is the one who walks righteously in verse 15. He will dwell on high. That means that the sinner is dwelling low. His place of defense will be the fortress of rocks. Bread will be given him, his water will be sure. So, this is saying that the person that is not concerned with judgment will also have the protection of the Lord and all of the benefits that come with that. So, one is fearful, one is blessed, one is happy. We get into trouble when we have our salvation, but we fear judgment, because if you fear judgment, you can't experience the happiness. Does that make sense? If I'm fearing, I can't enjoy
You talking about while you're here?
while you're here. If you're concerned with judgment coming and you're not even going to go through that judgment, you will not be able to experience in this life, because in this life we can still have a taste of him, and that is to avoid judgment. But if you're fearful of judgment, you're going to struggle. Life is not going to be easy for you to deal with. And you'll hear this from somebody that goes to church all the time. I'm not going to do that because you ain't keeping me from going to heaven, or you ain't going to put me in hell. And it's kind of like, what in the world are you talking about? That should never come out of your mouth. And if you believe that, then, I don't know what to tell you, because you cannot experience the beauty of God if you're fearing judgment. Think about it. What's the point of being saved and instead of being afraid of judgment? What should you be looking forward to?
Being present with the Lord.
Being alive forever.
See, I listen to your sermons. I don't know what they.
Being present with the Lord. Verse 17. Now, double fulfillment. We talked about this king that's coming is Hezekiah, but he is the shadow of Christ. So think in terms of Christ. Verse 17. Your eyes will see the king in his beauty. If we see the king in his beauty, how does everybody else see him?
It's wrath.
Bingo. Everyone else is going to see him in wrath. We'll see him in his beauty. Great white throne. Those that come before him, cast over, you're going to see him in his wrath. We get to see him in his beauty. They will see the land that is very far off. So we get to see, and the far off land that he's talking about here, for us, we're talking about that place to come, not made by hands, that beautiful place. Your heart will meditate on terror. Uh-oh. Where is the scribe? Where is he who weighs? Where is he who counts towers? Okay, so he's talking about here, those that are under judgment, what they're going to have to worry about is what you all said happens to you when you go to court. You said it. What do you do when you have to go to court? What are you trying to think of?
Excuse.
Get out of it.
Where's the-
How do I
Get out of it.
figure out, how can I get out of this? Your heart will meditate on terror. Where is the scribe? That's the lawyer. Where is he who weighs? That's the judge. Where is he who counts the towers? I'm looking for somebody to give me some help somehow. Somebody with some pull, somebody with some weight. Somebody help me. This is what's funny. The unsaved person that is afraid of judgment is also a person. This is the crazy part. Again, doesn't make any sense. Knowing judgment is coming and knowing there's a solution over here, instead, they want to run to some other way of getting around this. And when you start looking at what they're looking for someone else to help them figure out how to get out of this. Who can help me? This is the exact same thing. If you think about when we began in Isaiah, this began with him going to the king and saying, hey, this is what's coming. It's like a person looking at judgment coming. Israel is going to do this with this other nation. They're going to come and get you. But God says he's got your back, which is your salvation. What did the king do? He rejected it. Now he knows it's coming. He rejects it and he says, I'm going to talk to Egypt. That's what this is right here. That's that very same type of thing. And that's what the unsaved person does. Unsaved people that believe that God does exist, and they might even think Jesus is real. But they'll say something stupid like, but I don't want to do the church thing. Forget that. I'm not gonna do the church thing. I just, God just gotta look at my heart. Something like that. They're the ones here that's meditating on terror. Verse 19. You will not see a fierce people, a people of obscure speech, beyond perception, of a stammering tongue that you cannot understand. So when he says here, you will not. Now this is where Isaiah is kind of confusing. But the you here will not see a fierce people. The fierce people are the Assyrians. So he's talking back to Judah. He's saying you're not going to see them. And Judah, the Assyrians would be the ones of a stammering tongue that you cannot understand. You won't even understand their speech, the people that are coming to get you. But that's who God is using for judgment. So for the ones that are not going to receive any judgment, they're not going to experience any of this. But here's the thing. Does Judah know that the Assyrians are coming?
Yes.
Right. They know the Assyrians are coming. But God has told them, I got you back. Don't worry about it. They're not going to take over. So, how do you live if you are a Jewish person in this day and you live in Jerusalem, let's say? Fearful? As it pertains to just as it pertains to the Assyrians. How should you be?
Not fearful.
Not fearful. You should be fine. Because God has said, here's the issue though. The Assyrians are going to come and they're going to tear up Israel, the northern kingdom. They're going to walk through and wipe it out. And then they're going to come. This is where the faith thing comes into play. For us today, it looks like this. No matter saved or unsaved, all of us are on the road towards what? You're going to get older and older and death. Okay. Some are headed to judgment. Some are headed to glory. If you're headed to glory, you shouldn't fear death. For them, think of Assyria as being death. And God has said, don't worry about it. But you see what death does. Just like for us today, we see what death does. And so we have this fear, and if you have this fear, then you will miss out on the experience that you could have in life if you are afraid of what is coming. Now can you understand why the Bible pushes the idea of living by faith, not by sight? Because it takes faith in order to live happily. It does. Here's the funny part. If you're saved and you don't live your life by faith, then you spend all your time here in fear for nothing. You could have enjoyed.
Doomsday prepper.
Exactly. Concerned, worried, afraid of what's coming. Verse 20, look upon Zion, the city of our appointed feast. Your eyes will see Jerusalem, a quiet home. So he's basically saying, I'm going to take care of Jerusalem. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to make sure that everything is okay. You're going to have a quiet home. Now, if I'm going to look upon Zion, and if I go back to verse 17, there's this beautiful king that's going to be seen. I told you all for this prophecy is Hezekiah. But for us, who is that beautiful king? Jesus. What does he look like? He said a beautiful king. Okay. Let's go to John 20. John 20. All right, find verse 24. All right, so you all know this story. This is the story of Thomas, right? And Jesus has appeared, comes back 8 days later. Thomas missed the meeting. So Thomas is having to experience Jesus for himself. Now Thomas, called the twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. The other disciples therefore said to him, we have seen the Lord. So he said to them, unless I see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. So Thomas basically says, I don't know if y'all saw Jesus or not. Notice how Thomas says, I'm going to identify Jesus. Not by the way I saw him before he was crucified. I need to see him after the crucifixion. So then after 8 days, the disciples were again inside, and Thomas with them. Jesus came, the doors being shut, and stood in the midst and said, peace to you. And he said to Thomas, reach your finger here and look at my hands, and reach your hand here and put it into my side. I want y'all to think about that for a second.
So he went out.
He put his hand into the wound. So there is a gaping hole in the side. There are nail prints in this. So if that's there, that would mean that that crown of thorns that he had, that scarred up his head, that had blood, the scars are still there, right? I'm sure that if he'd have looked down at his feet, we would have seen the prints there as well. So also, they beat him prior to the cross, disfigured his face, so that's still there. So what I'm saying is, what we will see will not be that picture that we have of Jesus.
No.
You know, the one where he's, I don't know why it's always two fingers. I never did the two finger thing.
He's out.
Is that what that is? But they're always together. It's not like this. It's always like, I don't know what that means. That's why priests do this. But anyways,
Not priest.
the priests be doing that.
Black Jesus on this house.
They're not trying to point.
Man, it's just, I don't know what it means. But not going to be that Jesus. I mean, he was a mess. So now think about when we see the beauty of the king is in the sacrifice that he gave for us. That's his beauty. And by the way, the Bible has never declared that Jesus was beautiful to look at. In fact, he was common. All right, common, not good looking, not taller than everybody else.
And he probably wanted him like that so they wouldn't have people want to be around him because of the way he looked and things like that.
Say it
You know
again.
how
you tall.
They're not
Yeah,
mesmerized
Yeah, they
by
might mesmerize, they
Yeah.
actually have to feel.
Yeah, he was just average, nothing to look at, nothing special. And now, he's somebody you,
really don't know.
yeah, be very difficult to look at. But what you will see is you're going to see the sacrifice that was made for you. That is what we'll be presented with all of eternity. A constant reminder of what he's done. So you kind of get a picture, but I'm gonna show you something. Turn back to Zechariah chapter 12. So even when you go back to the Old Testament, Zechariah back by Haggai, back there, back someplace back there.
12, you said?
Yeah. You'll find it before I will. I'm in Zephaniah. Hold on. There it is. Zechariah. Zechariah's after.
112?
No, Zechariah 12. 12 and 10. Y'all find it yet? Still looking? If you get to Haggai and Obadiah and Joel, he's still to the right.
Why didn't you just say
Chapter
two
12.
before Matthew?
Yeah, that's what I was
Huh?
gonna say.
Why didn't you just say like two before Matthew?
That's too easy.
That's what chapter you
And
said?
we just don't.
Chapter
flip
12.
it.
All right, yeah, he's just before the end of the Old Testament. How's that?
All you have to do is flip forward to the right or something.
All right, Zechariah chapter 12, verse 10. Now, this is God talking, but it's actually the second person of the Trinity talking. And I will pour on the house of David and on the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and supplication. Then they will look on me, whom they pierced. Yes, they will mourn for him as one mourns for his only son, and grieve for him as one grieves for a firstborn. I'm going to keep reading, and you're going to see some things start to make a little, that will kind of give you a picture of what I'm talking about when we see him. In that day there shall be a great mourning in Jerusalem, like the mourning at Hadad Rimmon in the plain of Megiddo. And the land shall mourn, every family by itself, the family of the house of David by itself, and their wives by themselves. Goes on with all the different families. I'm not going to go through those. Get down to chapter 13. In that day a fountain shall be opened for the house of David and for the inhabitants of Jerusalem, for sin and for uncleanliness. It shall be in that day, says the Lord of hosts, that I will cut off the names of the idols from the land, and they shall no longer be remembered. I will also cause the prophets and the unclean spirit to depart from the land. When do you think this is, by the way?
There's 7 years of, yeah.
After the millennial kingdom. All right. It shall come to pass that if anyone still prophesies, then his father and mother who begot him will say to him, you shall not live, because you have spoken lies in the name of the Lord. And his father and mother who begot him shall thrust him through with when he prophesies. They're going to kill him. And it shall be in that day that every prophet will be ashamed of his vision when he prophesies. They will not wear a robe of horsehair to deceive, but he will say, I am no prophet, I am a farmer, for a man taught me to keep my cattle from my youth. That's an old saying. You'll see it over in Amos, where he's basically saying that in the millennial kingdom there's no need for prophecy or anything like that anymore. So you get to verse 6, and one will say to them, what are these wounds between your arms? Then he will answer, those with which I was wounded in the house of my friends. And he's talking about himself. What are these wounds within your arms? He's talking about being pierced. And it's a reference to, even in the millennial kingdom, those who come into the millennial kingdom who will see Christ, will be with him, but they will see Christ. They will still see he's still that same wounded, even though he's sitting on the throne and physically there, he's not changed. He hasn't, when the Bible talks about the Son of Man coming in his glory doesn't mean that he's physically changed. He's physically still the wounded looking Christ. He's going to carry that throughout eternity. So you can understand that his sacrifice that he made if you stop and think about it for just a second, I mean, most of us get to heal from our stuff to where,
Right.
yeah, he's gonna keep it for the very purpose of us understanding when we look upon him, we can see the beauty of his sacrifice. Because the beauty of his sacrifice is, I don't have judgment. There's the judgment. He took the judgment on himself, and I can physically see it.
Will you be able to physically, will he have a physical body?
Yes,
So so you can touch him.
yes. I mean, if we were to go back to Thomas, and remember when he first showed up, what did he tell them? Give me something to eat. He ate, and then he breathed on them. We physically hear it. So, yeah, physical, and you'll see it.
Yeah, when you see it, you'll know for sure.
That-
There'll be no doubt in your mind.
That'll always be the reminder. So you can always understand why, when we see him, we will want to worship him. We'll want to worship him. It won't be because he's. Think about the opposite end. If you saw Satan, he's an angel of light. He's the most beautiful creature that God created. His beauty would be mesmerizing. So that kind of goes, walk by faith, not by sight. I believe that if the resurrected Jesus showed up and Satan showed up and someone who wasn't aware, and they would say to them, which one of these would you worship? They'd be running to Satan. Right? The book of Proverbs kind of proves that when it talks about the harlot and the wise, which is, she's the plain woman, I think.
Yes, wisdom.
Wisdom, the plain one. And that's what it says. The plain was calling out, the harlot's down there, she's seducing. She looks better. People go to what looks better. All right, come on back to Isaiah. Huh?
It's not a bad thing.
What? To go to what looks better? I guess it depends on the circumstance. But it ain't always, looks can be very deceiving.
Deceitful. Yeah, but ugly ain't the best.
Ugly?
You see that today, though. I mean, you think when you see a plain female, she will be overlooked the majority of the time
Mhm.
because versus someone who is, all dolled up and could be the worst personality, but if they look good, yeah.
What are they being looked to for?
I mean, I'm not saying that it's correct. I said we see it a lot in society because it's physical. In most plain James, that's more spiritual.
Looking for help from me on that?
No, I'm looking at the men because well, that's why I said, what are you saying? Are you saying men overlook plain Jane?
No,
No,
in
job,
general, relationships.
Okay. I was gonna say because men don't overlook plain Janes.
I disagree with that. I think they.
I was like, oh,
They do
I
a lot.
guess they-
I disagree with
When
that
Sandy
too.
met me, I was making donuts, and all her friends are going, he does what?
No, that was your occupation.
You were making donuts.
Right.
Well, that sounds good to me. I mean, it's like, I don't know. You still make it?
Right.
So
Look, I need an old fashioned right now.
men do not overlook plain Janes from a sexual marketplace. No, they don't.
you know,
Yeah, I
mama
see
looking
that.
at you crazy.
Yeah, that's
What did
you
say?
understand what I'm saying?
What you say, Marla? What you
She-
say?
Oh, they
I
look at the
understand
same
that,
thing,
that's
they
what I
have
said.
low self-esteem.
We have to talk about it after the camera's on.
Oh.
No, yeah, from
I think I
Oh,
got the
sexual
perspective.
perspective,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Because it's about equipment, it's
Yeah.
not about.
but if you wanna, if sometimes they look at it like just maybe a trophy, they want some men just suck on. I'm not saying all, but. they-
That's why I said it depends on the circumstance.
Yeah, but that's about ego, it has nothing to do with
Yeah.
a woman, it's that you want other men to look at you like, ooh, so I mean, you can do that with cars, you can do that with how you dress, I mean, it's interchangeable, it's not even about the woman, it's just about ego.
Okay. So,
be ugly for one, maybe beautiful for someone.
Ugly or not?
Eight.
We'll go on. We'll go on for the.
It's the equipment, it's not the.
All right, so I guess I will know. Camera.
Yeah, you did. You did.
You open the can and kick the can over.
Right?
Oh, I can shut the can back up. But so so in verse 20, look upon Zion, the city of appointed feast. Your eyes will see Jerusalem, a quiet home.
Wait,
We're still in.
Isaiah?
Isaiah,
Oh, okay, yeah, right.
I'm sorry, Isaiah 33 and 20. We're out of.
We were.
Zechariah.
What you gotta see?
I'm sorry, I should have said back to Isaiah. All right. Look upon Zion, the city of our appointed feast. Your eyes will see Jerusalem, a quiet home, a tabernacle that will not be taken down. Again, for the direct reference, this is during the time of Hezekiah, but for us, we're looking at this from the ultimate fulfillment, which is in the millennial kingdom. Not one of its stakes will ever be removed, nor will any of its cords be broken. So for them, what he's telling them is, no matter what the Assyrians are doing, they're not going to mess with Jerusalem. Now remember, they rejected God's offer of help. I want y'all to remember this. They rejected God's offer of help. They went to Egypt.
Not they, it was just the king, right? Or did he have to get?
He represents the people. So remember I said, look at Judah as a person. They rejected God. So why is God going to still protect Zion and Jerusalem? And protect them there.
The promises to Abraham.
Yes, he doesn't break his promises. Y'all may remember when we were in, was it Exodus? Exodus. God got mad at the Israelites and he moved his own camp over here, and Moses went to him and talked to him, and he was like, man, God was basically, I can't stand him. You know, I can't stand him, Moses. But I'll still be with him. I'm just over here. Kind of like that. It's like God makes a promise and God keeps his promise. God is faithful even when we're not. Even though they weren't being faithful to him, he was being faithful to them. But remember, we also talked about the very fact that because of that, they would be allowed to see his judgment at work, which would cause them to lift him up, because they couldn't see his grace until they were broken down. So even though Zion is going to stand and nothing is going to happen to Zion to tear it up, it doesn't mean that they're not going to suffer as this happens, so that they can actually come back to the point of recognizing who God is. The reason we can't exalt God when we can't exalt God is because we've exalted ourselves too much. So in order for us to exalt him, we have to become low. All right? So verse 21. But there the majestic Lord will be for us, a place of broad rivers and streams, in which no galley with oars will sail, nor majestic ships pass by. So it says here that God is going to protect them, that even if someone wanted to bring in, you know what, when you see the word oars, that should tell you that it's boats, ships. Mm-hmm. Even in the galleys were usually ships of war. So no one's going to come in, no one's going to get them. God is going to always protect them. Verse 22, and this is in parentheses, for the Lord is our judge, the Lord is our lawgiver, the Lord is our king, and then he will save us. So this is an interesting order. The Lord is our judge. What does a judge do? What does that mean? Brings down judgment, declares unrighteousness, right? He's our judge. The Lord is our lawgiver. If the judge is the lawgiver, then the judgments that he's going to give are going to be completely accurate. Do you know what's wrong with judges today?
It's their perspective. They try to read into it.
Right. They interpret the law because they didn't write the law. Right? Even when Congress passes a law, the judge has to look at the law and say, I believe it meant this. Right? Well, if the judge is the lawgiver, then whatever the judgment is, you can't argue with it. The Lord is our king. The king is the one that's in sovereign control. But here's the other part. So if I'm judged by the lawgiver, I know I'm going to be guilty, and I know that if I'm judged by the lawgiver and I'm guilty, the king is going to declare is going to carry out my punishment, but he will save us. That's the key. He will save us. Your tackle is loosed. What is tackle? Bait.
Your stuff you wear.
Keep reading. I just wanted to see who's going to go with fish on that. Your tackle is loose. They could not strengthen their mast. They could not spread the sail.
The pulleys and stuff that they yank the ropes on.
Yeah, that's what keeps this shit. I had to throw that one, that King James in there. I knew, I said, see, just stop. If you don't look at the context, somebody's gonna think tackle box. I was just waiting for it. Bait. Then the prey of great plunder is divided. The lame take the prey. The lame, what are the lame?
The one that can't walk. He said lame.
Mhm. They could not spread the sail. Then the prey of great plunder is divided. The lame take the prey. Who's the prey? What is prey? Who's the prey?
You are.
No. If I'm not, if I were to say here's a lion and here's a gazelle,
It's usually that they are weaker.
the weaker, right? But who's the lion?
You would think
Oh,
that's
lame.
You would think the weaker is the lame, but
No, lame.
the lame, I think the lame is now taking
The
prey.
devil in his imps.
The lame here is those that are weak. And what he's saying is that God will protect them, and even when the enemy comes, the enemy will become the prey, and the lame, who would have been the weaker, will take the prey. You get it now? So the enemy, so the stronger is the enemy. The enemy come. I'm the prey.
The weaker.
The enemy is stronger than me. But what God is going to do is, since I'm the prey, what's going to happen is that he's going to reverse it. They become the prey, and even though I'm lame,
The weaker shall take the
the
stronger.
weaker shall take the stronger, right? Verse 24, and the inhabitants will not say, I am sick. The people who dwell in it will be forgiven their iniquity. And after all of that, it's verse 24. It's almost like verse 24 is, and that's just, you're looking at the physical parts of this, of him saving Israel. But the key to this is, verse 24, and the inhabitants will not say, I am sick. I am sick is a reference to, what do you think?
Your stomach turning and just being scared.
Hmm. Why?
Actual physical ailment.
Mm-mm. By his stripes.
Oh, so I'm not a believer? Like-
No, the inhabitants will say, will not say I am sick. In other words, the inhabitants, if by his stripes I am healed, what am I healed from? Sin, sickness. So my sin, sickness will be healed. That's why the rest of this says, the people who dwell in it will be forgiven their iniquity. That's the important thing there. No more sin, sickness, be forgiven their iniquity. Even though they rejected him at first, he's saying that when Hezekiah takes over Israel, that's why Hezekiah is called the most righteous king that Israel had. He brought back the law. He brought them all back into worship. He got rid of all of the idols. They were pure. They walked upright. They walked righteously. All of those things. It is a picture of what Christ is going to do in the millennial kingdom, right? He's going to take away all of these iniquities. And what he does for us in our salvation, he takes away that sin, sickness. He forgives us our iniquities. That is the most important thing, because the forgiveness of iniquities, I mean, what is judgment for? because of iniquity, right? So him taking away that takes us out of judgment. So what we have in this chapter 33, the whole picture is this picture of judgment from the perspective of judgment for what it is and who receives it and who doesn't. It goes back to, there's only two kinds of people in this world. What are they? Believers and unbelievers. That's it. There's no third category. There is no purgatory. You believe it or you're not. And if you're an unbeliever, you're going to receive judgment. And it's even worse that if you understand judgment, that you would still reject God. That's crazy. Because this is what you're going to get. So that clears out chapter 33. When we go into chapter 34 on next week, we're going to see how he's going to go back to dealing with the nations. We're going to see this same fury that he has, this judgment that he's going to have upon nations. So we will stop there. Bye. Cameron. Thank you all. So I can